Hello, gentlemen. In this tutorial, we are going to learn about writing in science class, writing formal lab reports. And we're going to do formal lab reports in conjunction with our BioBottle experiments, where we will set up a self-contained ecosystem and monitor its success, progress, growth, um, over a series of a few weeks. Uh, Scientists write about their experiments for a number of reasons, many of which we have talked about in class already. They write about their experiments to share their results, to prove that they conducted the experiment, to allow other researchers to do their experiments, to publish results, to make new discoveries, and also to continue previous research. So having a clear record of what was done in the experiment, the materials used, the step-by-step procedure that was used, the data that was collected, and finally a summary paragraph conclusion is really, really essential for any of those reasons that scientists write about their experiments. And so we're going to take a stab at this with a formal lab report. Here's an example I have for you here. This template will be shared with you via Google Docs, and you will each have a copy. Note right at the top, please, that it asks you to delete all the instructions that are inside this symbol here prior to submitting your final lab report document. The bold headings here are the headings of what's coming after, so what needs to be included. All experiments start with a title. The title should relate to the question. So what is the question that your experiment is attempting to answer here? And I will show you an example of this from a previous year's formal lab reports momentarily. But what question will your experiment attempt to answer as it has to do with our BioBottles? And so you would highlight this and you would type your own question in here. Then we move down to hypothesis. If you're working in a group, you will each write a hypothesis and put it in this. And a hypothesis is an educated guess about what the answer to the question is going to be. What's going to happen during your experiment? Okay, and based on those results, what do you think your answer is going to be? Hypotheses are always written in an if, then, because format. For example, if this happens, then this will happen because this, this, and this, right? And again, I'll show you an example. If, then, because can be in one sentence. I'm going to ask that you put your initials after your hypothesis that you wrote. Question hypothesis. Now we're moving on down to materials. This is a list of materials that is needed to complete your experiment so that anyone who reads your report, whether it's another scientist or another class or maybe next year's 5th grade, would be able to repeat your experiment using the same materials. So this needs to be a very specific list of materials included in building the bottle and conducting your experiment. If you need any additional materials, maybe a light or a fan or additional substances that you would add to your bottle, you would just list them right here. So this is item 1, and you would move on to item 2, item 3, etc. Okay? A nice list there of materials. The procedure is a list of the specific steps you follow to complete your experiment. Now this needs to be so specific that anybody could conduct your experiment. If you need a certain substance added to your bottle, is that added every day? Do we add that substance every other day? How do you account for the weekends? Okay, or any vacation time that may be flexed in here? What about your drop day with science? How do you account for that? If you are changing the location of your bottle. How often do you do that? So think about the details of your experiment, and your procedure should be very specific. Okay, everyone can assume that the bottle is built. You do not need to include building of the bottle in your procedure. So the first step here could just say build the bottle. Okay, and then we move on from that to whatever the next step is. Day 1, you do this. On every odd day, you add salt or whatever else you're adding, if you're adding anything. Okay? So the procedure, very, very specific, step by step. Okay? Provide more detail than you think you might have to. Next is the data. So this is what you're going to collect. Are you collecting plant height? Are you collecting the clarity of the water? Are you collecting soil moisture? Are you collecting all of those? What is the data that you're collecting? Okay, data and observations really come together. Okay, most boys choose to do these on one spreadsheet that they would link from their formal lab report to a separate Google spreadsheet. Just the spreadsheet helps to provide better organization. And this is an example right here of a spreadsheet from last year that was linked, okay, data table. So these are the days of the observations. This is the date they occurred, the time they occurred, the weather, temperature. These guys were looking at water clarity, soil moisture, animal descriptions, plant heights, and then anything extra that was happening in their bottle that they found. And this information, this data and these observations is then used later on in your conclusion. So you can do a separate data table here, and I'll show you how to do that in class, and just provide a link. But the data and observations is really the day-to-day stuff. What are you seeing in your bottle? Recording those things, copying them down so that you have kept track of any changes that occur in your bottle. The last piece is the conclusion. The conclusion is the analysis of that data and how that helps you answer this question. Okay. The conclusion I've tried to lay out for you as simply as possible. 8 steps here. You're going to write this in 2 phases. You're going to fill out 8 of these. So you're going to rewrite your guiding question, rewrite your hypotheses if there were more of them. We'll talk about control, summary of your observations, etc. So this is going to be all laid out. And then we're going to take these numbers away and write it in a paragraph format. Okay, I'll give you details of the conclusion a little later on in class, but the conclusion is a probably 15-plus sentence paragraph that details the findings of the report, of the experiment, and maybe the answer to your question. The last piece of a formal lab report is 2 questions that you could ask that would further your investigation. What are you curious about now? Now that you've studied the impact of salt on your bioecosystem, do you have other questions that came from that? Maybe a different substance that could be added and how that could be changed, or manipulating another variable like adding water or diluting the salt differently. Again, any further questions? And you just write these questions right here at the bottom. Let me show you an example from last year. Okay. This was the title of their experiment, increasing the amount of sunlight. Question, how does increasing the amount of sunlight affect the plant growth? These were the 3 hypotheses. This was a group of 3. Notice the initials afterwards. If, then, because statements, the list of materials, their procedure, okay, each day water the soil. I would have liked to see it be more specific, between 50 and 100 milliliters, okay, and measure the plants. Now these guys chose to keep their data table within this document, which is fine. And here's their conclusion written in a paragraph form. They have 4 further questions for investigation. That's fine. You can add more if you want. Okay. Conclusion written in a whole paragraph format. We'll get into the details of that next time. But that's an example of what we're looking for. Again, we write about our experiments to further investigation, to share our results, and as a way to keep track of what we did. Formal lab reports. Good stuff.